You'd think if I could trust and have the faith with literally losing a sense, losing my eyesight over to God, you'd think this other stuff in my life would be easier, but it's not necessarily the case.
Hi, my name is Bela, and honored to be joined by Jake Olson.
My name is Jake Olson. I am 26 years old. I am completely blind, and I am the president of Engage, which is a digital platform that helps book speakers for engagements.
Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood, how you grew up, and the story of what happened to your sight?
I don't remember when my parents first started noticing a glow coming from my eye, but around 6 months old, my parents, some family members were starting to notice that there was like a glow coming from my left eye. Mom took me to the doctors a couple times. They really weren't too concerned, but eventually she really forced the issue. And when the doctor turned off the lights and took a look into my eye, they saw something was wrong and referred us to Children's Hospital Los Angeles, where we would find out that I had retinoblastoma, which is cancerous tumors in the retina of the eye. We weren't left with any other option than just to remove the cancer, and by doing that, remove the eye. Cancer in my right eye, however, was only about half as bad, and so we were left with more options. About 3 years after my cancer went into remission, we were back for an annual checkup, and doctors looked into my right eye, and sure enough, another tumor was spotted. And this just started a vicious cycle that really lasted the rest of my childhood. By the time I was age of 12 years old, that cancer had returned in my eye 7 times. This time, we didn't have the same options and treatment options as the other times. Basically, I had exhausted chemotherapy. They couldn't give me more chemo. I had exhausted radiation. They couldn't give me more radiation. And so the other treatments that we would be treating the cancer with weren't really effective. So again, to prohibit that cancer from leaving my eye and going to the rest of my body, the removal of the eye becomes necessary, just like how they did when I was a little baby with my left eye. Now this time it was my right eye, meaning I have to go completely blind, which as a 12-year-old, I fully understood and really had a lot of different emotions that came with that news. I tell people really the first emotion I felt was just this overwhelming sense of frustration. Again, 12 years of battling this cancer, my entire childhood was occupied by fighting this cancer so I wouldn't have to go blind. So to be told after all of that, we were going to have to go blind anyways, that really hurt. And was frustrating. And then came the thoughts of, well, what's my life going to look like, be like without eyesight, right? Like up to this point, even though I had one eye, I still was using that eyesight to live life. And so to think of a life where I couldn't see the whiteboard, I couldn't see the piece of paper in front of me, I couldn't see the sports ball I was trying to play with my friends, I couldn't see, the TV or the video games I would go over to my friend's house and play. Like all this stuff that I just, used my eye to do, well, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. And so the uncertainty of that, the sadness of that, all of those, thoughts and speculations started, hitting my mind at 1,000,000 miles per hour. And so, yeah, it was a very difficult time in my life. But for the next 6 weeks, which really was, from the point they told me I was going to have to go blind to the point where that surgery was scheduled, that ran through my head.
When you heard the news that you'd have surgery in your right eye until the day of the surgery, was there any, one line or something that you kind of used to get through it, one person you turned to, or anything specifically that kind of helped you through that very difficult period? Battling
cancer for 12 years really taught me how to have a fighting spirit. It developed my faith, really knowing that in these circumstances that God had a plan for my life. In all of this, just trusting that even though I didn't understand it, though I couldn't see why this was happening or what was going to come of it, knowing that there was a purpose in what was going on really allowed me just to continue to worry, or not even worry, but focus on what I needed to focus on, not, what's going to happen in a year, what's going to happen later on in life. No, just focus on getting through this day, getting through this moment, and continuing to fight on.
Would you say you grew up with that faith, based sort of attitude towards life? Was that something that your parents felt strongly about?
Really at the age of 6, once that cancer had come back the second time, that was really the first time I noticed I had cancer, right? So that was the first time I realized what chemo was, realized what getting shots meant, realized what battling this cancer looked like. And yeah, it was scary, and it was hard. It was, there was a lot to it, and I knew that I needed something to help me get through these scary, painful moments. And as a 6-year-old, being told that here's this faith that you can have that is going to give you that. I grabbed onto it and just ran with it and developed my own relationship with God and really depended on that through the rest of my battle with cancer. And so again, by the time my battle with blindness started, I really did have a battle-tested faith that was ready to press on and just lean into God more.
Can you tell us about the surgery, the post-surgery, and how that obviously changed your life and how you navigated that process?
It's funny because before the surgery for those 6 weeks, and obviously, as it kept creeping up closer and closer, the thoughts of, I'm seeing this for the last time, or I'm seeing that for the last time, or, whatever, became more intense. And everything up to the, literally the ride of the hospital to, seeing the hospital that morning, like it was very intense, and just knowing what was going to happen. When I woke up from the surgery, in a sense, there was a burden that was lifted off my shoulders. I remember waking up and realizing, this has happened. I'm blind now. But there was this burden that was, lifted off my shoulders in the intensity of that surgery to come. It had happened. And so I could just move on from it. I made a decision coming home from the hospital that day and every day since that, blindness wasn't going to rob me of the things I loved. Having fun with my friends, obviously getting good grades, just applying myself, all these things that I knew I could do, wanted to do, expected of myself. I wasn't going to let blindness get in the way of stopping that. Now, was I going to sugarcoat it and say, well, nothing's changed? No, of course, a huge thing has changed. And so it was going to require me to figure out how to do things differently. It was going to be growing pains. It was going to be a lot of frustration with trying to learn literally a new language in Braille and getting around with a cane and how to, socially interact with people now. But I knew what I wanted to do in life, and that was just be a normal kid, do the things I loved, and I was going to figure out a way to do that.
And how did that work with your friends? Obviously, you were so much more ahead of them in terms of what you'd been through. Did you ever feel a little isolated or maybe misunderstood? And how did you work through that?
It was weird in the beginning. I mean, I think everyone just was like, hey, what do we do now? Jay can't see. So there was a little bit of like growing pains, even in just your closest relationships, right? Like, I don't know what you're supposed to tell 12 and 13-year-old kids, hey, your friend's going blind, figure out a way to play with them now. That's not there's no book, I guess, written on that necessarily. So there was growing pains, but it was interesting because when I went to high school, now here was 1,300 new kids that I really had never met, did not know me, did not know my personality. And that's when I really kind of found out, hey, you can't just see your friend across the room or across the hallway, or you can't just catch someone's eyes they're walking past and drag them into a conversation, right? Like, so there's definitely a lot of social stuff I had to figure out as soon as I entered into high school.
So how did you start playing for the team eventually? How did that happen?
Admittedly, I did not stick to my promise of not letting blindness stop me from the things I loved my first 2 years of high school. I remember just going into high school. I went to a very good high school with very good athletics. Our league is the top league in all of the United States for tackle football in high school. So it was serious big boy tackle football. And I did not think I, could have a position out there, right? I wasn't, again, going to sugarcoat it. And, I could, play quarterback or receiver. No, I knew I couldn't do those things. And so I just figured, well, I just can't participate in general. So I went to the games on Friday nights and I saw my friends, be on the team and the camaraderie and them joking around, making fun of coaches, all this stuff that I just loved about football. And I just came to my senses my sophomore year and just was like, hey, what are you doing, Jake? You are halfway through your high school career. High school football is one of the more special things you could ever do in life. And you're literally not doing it because you're blind. Figure out a way. And so I talked to my friends, talked to a couple people. Any way I could just do anything on the field, compete, contribute, like anything that like we could think of. They came upon the long snapping position. So I went out to try out. I was horrible. But there was one coach who saw me and said, hey, you don't know what you're doing. Like, if you really want to try this, like, let me at least teach you the technique. So every day that summer, going into my junior year, we met, we practiced. We were in, 90, 100-degree heat all throughout the summer, just out there practicing. Showed up back in August to fall camp, and I was the best long snapper on the team. So I was the long snapper for varsity my junior and senior year of high school.
And would you say that once you discovered, your ability to snap, that was then like a part of you that found something that you can sort of use to heal with and not let, your blindness prevent you from doing what you love?
No matter what your circumstances, if you love to do something, there's a way to do it. Figure out that way to do it. It might not be like a way that anyone else uses. You might have to come up with the most convoluted, confusing, whatever way, but it is absolutely worth it, because if it means that much to you, then it's going to mean that much to you to do it. And so for me, football was that. And yeah, I cannot tell you how happy I was once I made the team, once I was actually out there snapping. I was doing something that not many people would have ever even, considered to be serious. They would have laughed at the proposition of a blind guy being able to go out there on a college football field and actually play football. And for me to be able to go and show them that this is how I do it and this is how it's possible, I think was one of the coolest things to be able to, rearrange the thought process of what's possible and impossible, and however many thousands and millions of people that saw it.
One of the attitudes that sort of got you through the challenges in your early life and throughout was your faith and how you use that to lean on. And I'm sure it's a process and there's ups and downs, and sometimes it's probably easier to believe than it is not to. So I'm curious for how you sort of traveled those ups and downs. Was there ever a time where you just thought, it was easy to give up, and how did you overcome that?
Yes, faith is a muscle, and I love kind of the analogy of that. I love to work out, and so when you kind of see it like that, like a muscle can get tired, it can kind of get fatigued, right? But you also work it out, to build it, to get stronger, and to be able to endure more, And so with me, yeah, there's obviously times where you have a lack of faith. You don't trust God in a circumstance, right? If it's in what areas, yeah, there can be different areas. There can be one specific area. I found that, hey, I'm trusting God to help, me with my blindness, and he's figuring that. But hey, what about, this girl situation? Or what about, classes? Or what about, what I feel like I got to do that on my own. And so like it's interesting, because you can have faith in some areas that are stronger than other areas. To know that, hey, here's this all-powerful God who's always in control, and you don't need to worry about that part of your life. Just everything over to him, surrender everything over to him. That's where that true power in faith lies. And so, there's definitely times I find myself, trying to continue to grab onto those certain things that, I don't know if God's got me here. And so it's funny, because like you'd think if like I could trust and have the faith with literally losing my eyesight, get over to God, you think this other stuff in my life would be easier, but it's not necessarily the case. Just knowing that when you look at your life and you look at everything that's happened to you, everything that you've been through, that God has been there, and he's orchestrated that and is literally worked through that for your good. I think that there's just so much power to recognizing that, and so that's how I kind of get myself to surrender those little parts of my life that I may not have the strongest faith in.
Can you tell us how you started your foundation, what it's called and what inspired you and how that came about?
About a couple literally weeks after going blind, obviously my life was turned upside down in many aspects, but school was definitely one of them, right? This happened in the middle of the school year. And so I needed to figure out, hey, how am I going to continue to be a normal seventh grader? I didn't want to, be held back a year. I didn't want to lose the momentum I had of just, going forward. And look, the surgery didn't impact my mind or my intelligence, right? It impacted my eyesight. So, hey, how do we figure out how to overcome that barrier so that my mind and intelligence can still apply itself? I realized that technology was that gateway of continuing to allow someone who's blind or visually impaired to move on through school and further their education. So the thing is, this technology is not cheap. And if you're not born in, an affluent family, if you're not, don't have the resources to get this technology, then you're sitting there trying to read Braille, trying to do things in a very antiquated way. And guess what? That's going to leave that individual hindered. And so trying to get the technology to, blind schools, to different programs that, are going to go into these schools and allow these kids to have what they need, that's really where I started raising money. And so we were able to do that, and it was really cool just to see the impact that's had. And then we've also raised money for, cancer research when it comes to retinoblastoma, also given some to guide dogs for the blind, which is where my guide dog comes from. So, just different things that have touched my lives we've been able to give to. But the main purpose that we started it and raise money for it is to help other, blind kids get through the school using the technology that can allow them to fully reach their potential in education.
How has this, attitude of helping others and giving to others and charity and kindness helped in your own process of dealing with these challenges yourself?
I think realizing that other people are in your shoes, are going through what you're going through, right? That there's another blind kid who's going through having to figure out how to do math without being able to see the whiteboard, that there's another blind kid figuring out how to write an essay without being able to take a piece of paper and a pen and just jot down what he wants to write. Knowing that those people exist and are also going through it, it builds not only community, but it helps you understand that you're not alone. And so to be able to help those people and, use my story and use, my success as, a marker and a point of inspiration for other kids, that in return inspires me to know that, hey, we're all in this together. We're not alone. And someone's done it before me. Someone's doing it after me. Let me just be a vessel to try to help that process become a little easier for the people who come after me.
Besides for your journey with faith, are there any other specific guiding messages or a person that you sort of turn to when things get pretty rough that you'd like to share?
When you face adversity, when you face challenges, that responsibility of overcoming that lies with you and no one else. No one else can make that decision for you if you're going to overcome that adversity. Only you can sit there and say, I'm going to overcome this. Now, once you make that decision, yes, there's going to be a whole heck of a lot of people that are going to come alongside you and help you through that and figure out ways you can get over and you can overcome it. But that decision, that first initial decision lies with you. And so that's where that power is of just telling yourself, I have what it takes to overcome this. I want to overcome this. I will overcome this. And then finding out that way. My personal definition of resilience is if there's a will, there's a way. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, kind of mix that around, flip those two words, okay, well, if there's a way, then I'll have the will. But we're not afforded that luxury in life, many times, if at all, where we get to see the way through this adversity that's come for us. Instead, we just see the adversity. We don't see the way through. So we got to determine that will first, and then we find the way. And that's as true as in my story with anything I've done. But back to football, again, think about where I was my sophomore year of high school. I let blindness stop me from playing high school football because I couldn't see a way that I could play football. Well, when I stopped worrying about the way I was going to play football and took it back to the will of, hey, I have a will, I'm going to play football, I'm going to find a way, then that made finding the way possible. But it was because I couldn't see the way and I gave up on the will that I wasn't playing football. And so that's true in anything in life. That's why it's important to have a role model that is maybe not personal. That is someone who then really can move mountains with you because they, and a lot of times, are the one pushing you even when you kind of lose sight of maybe what's possible for yourself.
Any final remarks or messages or closing messages that you want to share with our audience?
There's a lot, obviously, we can do on this earth. There's a lot that we can, accomplish to really understand faith and who God is and what he thinks of you and how much he loves you, I think is a very important thing beyond any other thing to understand and apply to anything you're doing in life, because that, at the end of the day, is what's going to matter. There's really not anything else that we can do on this earth that's going to last for eternity, but there is one thing that is going to last for eternity. And so that's why I would say in final closing is just really understand who God is to you and know what God thinks of you.
Beautiful. Thank you so, so much. Thank you, Jake, for joining us today and for everything that was so meaningful and honest that you shared. If you like meaningful conversations like this, then please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell below.